Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing well, and ready and raring to go.
Yeah, we had a little
Solve all the problems here today, but we have a big problem to talk about today, and it's been around. We've made comments on it, and it's gotten my attention especially. And that has to do with these surgical masks that's going to save us from ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's, I was suspicious of it from the very beginning, continue to be even more so, and now there are some well-known physicians that are very knowledgeable that are writing articles to say that not only do they not do what they claim they do, they may well be doing some harm.
Yeah.
And Dr. Blaylock has written something there and is very good on this, and Dr. Coles has also written something. So the information is out there. And right now, though, I want to start off with the symbolism of it all, because it's now a political symbol. It's, are you obedient or not?
Yeah.
And if you're 1 out of 10 and you don't have one on, the other people scowl at you, and it's almost like, why don't you? Sometimes they go to that point, and sometimes they'll say, I'll turn you in, and sometimes they do that. But this is the indicator. I compare it to what it's been like traditionally to carry your papers. You don't have to carry your official papers in your wallet. What you do is you just have a mask on, and that gives you this official acknowledgement that you do obey.
Yeah.
And they see this and they let you alone. But that is something that I think is extremely important, because people are so easily intimidated by this. And I am afraid they're going to use something like this until they get that vaccine that has more in it than a vaccine. And we'll be talking about more of that later in a week, probably. We'll continue to talk about it. Yeah. And that's what they put in the vaccines in order to trace what we're doing and following, tracking people. I used to think that was, and I'm still hoping, that is so far out that people won't allow that to happen. When I look at the attitude of some about the mask business, then you can see why we have to be concerned. But we also see the other side of it. It's been the mask and this the strict rules you have when you go to a restaurant, and closing down one business that has less people than the other one that has a lot of customers, and they open up. So unfairness, and nobody proves it's done any good at all. So people are getting annoyed with it, and we do report on that, how many people have stood up to the officials. So it's something that right now I think we'll be wearing our mask. And I did see though that the governor, or was it the mayor of L.A., said, I'm going to do this until the end of August.
Yeah.
But then he had to back down a little bit. Well, we'll have to wait and see. So the people's voices are valuable, and they will be heard, but there has to be more than 2 or 3 of us. We have to have it, and that is why, peaceful civil disobedience, and I don't even call it civil disobedience, it's a expression, just going out and using your freedom of speech. So we shouldn't have any sense of guilt at all to say that I'd like to go to church and just go. And yet that is what they have done. They've closed us down, and people are still intimidated by it. But this whole thing, the school systems, are in a real mess, and they're not going to be ready by September. I can't believe they'll be ready, because there'll be so many rules. So when some of these restaurants and all open, they're totally unsuccessful because there's still way too much regulation. I think it's done deliberately, and not because they really think they're going to prevent another infection, but they want you to obey. They want to intimidate you, and that's what I think the mask symbolizes most importantly.
Submission. And you say it's so outrageous they won't possibly do this, but they're holding people's businesses hostage, their livelihoods hostage, and people are desperate. So they'll say, hey, if you don't do this, you can't open your business. And they're facing the loss of everything. But the idea that masks, now all of a sudden it's accepted. And I say, actually, ironically, now that we see that the disease, the new cases and the new deaths is going straight down worldwide, we see an increase in masks, which is strange. It wasn't long ago that even Fauci, the CDC, the WHO, they said, don't wear a mask. Fauci's on tape saying people shouldn't be wearing their masks in public. Masks are for people who are infected and that's what they wear. And they're not necessarily effective. We have our first JPEG. This is who we're talking about, and this is just one of many. This is Dr. Blaylock. He is a nationally recognized board-certified neurosurgeon and health practitioner. This is the article we're referring to. Face masks pose serious risk to the healthy. And it's worth discussing because no one questions whether they should. They just do it. And you see people at the store with these masks. The poor kids that are working in the H-E-Bs and the other stores wearing these masks all day long. But a couple of the things, and we'll go into them. Obviously, you know a lot more about this than I do. But what Dr. Blaylock mentions is a recent study among healthcare workers, because everyone says, hey, the nurses and everyone wear it. They found 21 to 35-year-old healthcare workers, 81% developed headaches from wearing the mask prolonged period of time. The frail and the elderly, especially those with lung disease, it can cause a severe worsening of your lung function if you're wearing these masks for an extended period. The drop in blood oxygen levels, and you can talk more about that, hypoxia, and what it does. But here's the most interesting thing, Dr. Paul, and I'll leave this segment after this, is that ironically, Dr. Blaylock points out that this drop in blood oxygen levels affects your immune system itself, your body's ability to fight viruses itself. So when you have that lower oxygen level, you're actually more vulnerable to the virus.
Well, it increases the CO2 is what the problem is. They can't get the CO2 out, and that's the most important thing the lungs do, get it out and get the oxygen back in. So this is well known now. They've made these tests, and you've already mentioned about the immune system. It actually decreases your immunity, and they're doing this. In medicine, I think about, stagnation of any of our organs. If you can't breathe, or your blood vessels aren't working well, or the intestinal tract isn't working well, or your muscles don't work, things get in worse shape. Mm-hmm. And this is what they're doing here, and they have found out that the breathing machines, the respirators, were doing exactly the opposite, and they were pushing in the wrong direction and making the conditions much worse. And the masks especially, they block the free flow of our oxygen in and CO2 out. And now, common sense should have said there was overkill. I don't know. I just wonder if in world history, I bet there isn't another time when the world went nuts. At one time, and said they've gone nuts on other things, but to everybody wear a mask on a virus that people don't even know for sure it's doing any good. But they are preparing it, and they have to do it by building up fear and intimidation. I think this mask is always the indication there that when people don't have the mask on, it's like, and some of them will get aggressive, and some of them will turn a person in, and this will be your papers to allow you to go outdoors. And of course, the ridiculous is we've already talked about how many times when one or two people walking in the park and nobody within a mile, they still have their mask on. I mean, and then it becomes, we're in this all together. We're all together, and we have to do it. Somebody can't just disobey and go about it. Even if the person who's not so much disobeying, but obeying a law of nature. I don't want something on my face. They get challenged, and the people who do go through all the process and follow the rules, they sort of resent this. Hey, this guy's staying free. He shouldn't have this much fun, And but the one thing that should finally get to the people is the unfairness. When this started, I said, there's no way that you can impose fairness in making people do certain things. And they tried. But now they're taking the regulations off. But that has to be unfair too, because you see some things where a barber shop with a couple people in them, they close them down and they make a big point of that individual. And yet you can walk in through a store, a huge chain store, and do the shopping. So it has nothing to do with common sense. It has to do with political intimidation, and that's why I will welcome the day, I hope it's soon, where people say, they really didn't do that much good, and they do cause trouble. They actually cause more infections, and they block everything, and they accumulate bacteria and viruses, and people finally say, if it doesn't do any good, just quit using it. But the numbers are growing a little bit in that regard, but there's a lot of people who still say, yes, we have to obey, even if it's idiotic. And of course, Fauci is the instigator of all this, and he knows everything. But I think there was a senator who told him, you don't know everything about this.
Yeah, exactly. They are a sign of submission, though. I'm following the rules. Why aren't you? And they're very effective at turning neighbor against neighbor. The glares that you get. And I think I may have told the story before. My father, who has a heart condition, was in the store and the mask slipped a little bit, and someone started yelling at him, "You're going to kill me! You're going to kill me!" And it really turns neighbor against. Normally in those circles, you never yell at someone like that. It's insane. Let's go through a couple of pictures, because first of all, there's one argument, and this is kind of a funny way of showing it, but the next one shows that they're not effective. Wearing a cloth mask to stop a virus is like installing a chain link fence to stop mosquitoes. Those cloth masks that everyone is making, they're good for virtue signaling and submission signaling, but they don't stop a virus, which is too small to get through there. The second one is the absurdity. Let's look at a couple of these clips. People driving in their cars by themselves wearing masks because I guess the corona is going to come out their steering wheel or something. And the next one here, I've seen plenty of these. People out, and you just mentioned it too, Dr. Paul, in the next clip, if we have it, is people out jogging, people out in the park. You can see this coming up now, the next one, by themselves, in nature, as if what? The river's going to give a corona? And I hate to make fun of it, but it is kind of silly. And then the next one, actually, which is a lot more serious, and this happened in New Jersey, and it's not the only one. This man was wearing his mask diligently. He listened to all the authorities and all the super smart people. He passed out, smashed his car into a pole, and I think he died. So there are real life consequences to listening to what the so-called experts say.
That's right. And we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on in Texas.
Yeah.
We have a governor that sort of went along with it. At the beginning, he would be protective and not be overly abusive of our rights. So he went along with all the regulations and intimidation. And then the people in Texas spoke out, and the case up in Dallas was an eye-opener.
Yeah.
So the Governor Abbott then changed his tune and backed off a little bit. But didn't he say something yesterday that he thought we had to go back for stronger regulations or something?
Yeah, well, let's actually, if we can skip the next one and go to the next slide with the governor on it, you can see he just yesterday, when we finished our show, he knew we were going to get on his case, so he didn't do it while we were here. He extended the disaster declaration for all Texas counties, even though there are probably, I think, 20 or so counties in Texas where there's not a single coronavirus death. But he says, this provides the state a number of resources to effectively serve Texans as the Lone Star State continues to mitigate the spread of the virus. So this is what he's afraid, I think, of ending it. But let's look at a couple of graphs, Dr. Paul, and I just pulled these off. These are widely accepted figures. Look at this. This is the total growth rate of total deaths in the U.S. Look at what's happened to that growth in deaths. Yeah, it peaked in March, and look at it now. Let's look at the next one. I just have, I think, 3 or 4 of these. Growth rate of total hospitalizations. Look where we are. We're negative hospitalizations now. And let's look at the next one here. Here's a couple more. Growth rate of new cases, negative. Growth rate of total cases, dropped way off. So here are the numbers. This is the COVID tracking project that everyone uses, everyone references, updated yesterday. These are the numbers, and yet the Texas governor still says, no, the emergency's there. We got to keep everything, You can open up, but you've got to have a long, we go to the website of Texas, long list. People can't survive in their businesses with these kind of stuff.
No, there's what a tremendous amount of economic harm that's been done by this. Even if they come across and say it's neutral, neither helps nor hurts. We don't think it helps at all and probably hurts. But then if you look at the economic harm that has come from this, it's horrendous. Even though I'm convinced that we were due for the downturn. The bubble was there. That was Federal Reserve and Congressional's responsibility. We knew it was going to burst. It did that, and now there's a retraction in the economy. But then on top of that, they had to add fuel to this, dump gasoline on the bubble bursting, and things are that much worse. So I think historic, just as I said, these masks were probably never in the history of the world had so many people around the world agreed on one thing, and it was even the downturn was not historic in that sense. You know, there's been many other times the downturn has been worse, but the coronavirus definitely plays a part in that. And some people say they initiated the bursting of the bubble, which isn't true. The bubble started bursting even at the end of last year, but it certainly got worse when this came up, and then the market really crashed. But that's ongoing. Even if tomorrow they accepted a wiser position on the coronavirus and backed off on all the regulation, let people do what they think they want to do, we still have a big economic problem, because what happens in the boom period is there's a lot of malinvestment and there's a lot of debt, and you never get back to real growth until you have the liquidation of the debt. So what have we done? Accumulated trillions of dollars of new debt, trillions of dollars of malinvestment, more monkeying around with interest rates. They can't lower interest rates any lower. Oh yeah, we can. We can make them negative, and that's something Powell was supposed to be talking about today. What does negative interest rates go? Well, the reason we need interest rates, it tells what the price of money to do, whether you should save, spend, build, and what we should do in the economy. But that's been totally destroyed, not by our current administration. I mean, they didn't correct it, but that type of philosophy has been around for a long time, and they've gotten away with it because we have been very productive. So the bubble was always papered over, and the bubble burst in 2008, and it has continued, and they're continuing to do that, keep spending money on manipulation, and they will work hard to continue to do what they're doing. Oh, it's the coronavirus. It didn't cause the bubble, and that the economy is all in trouble because of this, and we'll take care of that. We're gonna manage this quite well. Well, central economic planning is not a good idea because they always make mistakes. And so the financial people and the Federal Reserve, they made a ton of mistakes. And then they put on top of this the mistakes made by these viral planners on what to do to protect yourself against cold viruses. And now we have a real tragedy going on, because even though if they back off on some of the worst problems, to get people to understand why the whole country will have to live beneath its means, because we've lived beyond our means for so long, and that's what's happening now. But a politician can't possibly do it, because you'd be not treated well, because you would deliberately say, "Well, we have to quit spending." Yeah. Well, just think of how many millions of people got checks in the last month. Oh, they tided me over, helped me out. So we have to continue. The government has to keep bailing us out, and we have the socialists even agree with that. We'll go along with the progressive Democrats. We'll just keep spending the money, and Republicans too. I mean, the conservatives, because they're starting to worry a little bit. How are they going to keep up the empire, the empire overseas, with all this activity? And it's tougher now getting all the things they want to maintain our empire around the world, buying all these weaponry. It's not to maintain peace, it's to maintain the profits of the military-industrial complex, and that's a driving force here too, just as the money is a driving force on who gets to manufacture the immune system, the vaccine. That's what it's all about too. And then you have the people who live for the notoriety of being, I am the king, and I'll tell the people what to do economically, and I can tell the people what they can do with their lives, and cover your face or you'll go to jail. I mean, that attitude is pretty sick. But I still say, Daniel, we have talked about it, we see it, we hear it every day, and we're going to try to encourage more people to let us know, about the good stories out there.
Yeah, we get a lot.
Because we have that story about the policeman we'll talk about maybe tomorrow, and who stood up for doing the right thing, and actually, it looks like he'll lose his job over it. So, but people will stand up, and it seems like, isn't it amazing that one person, it's so small, but when all the other people are happy with them, they cheer them on, say this is wonderful, and they even the lady in Dallas, they get a lot of money. Keep doing it. We'll send you money. You're speaking up for us. So there's a chance that we're going to turn this tide, but right now we can't let the guard down for sure.
And on the economic side, I think there really is an element of class warfare, real class warfare going on in this, because you see the economic shutdown, it's disproportionately affecting those earning $40,000 or less by a long shot. These are people that can't work from home because they do things that require you to be somewhere. All the people that are cheering on, we've talked about this before, we had the professor on the show to talk about, the people cheering on, stay at home, stay safe, we're all in this together. They're still collecting their paychecks because they're generally working in higher level tech jobs, things that can be done remotely, whereas the people that are really out there working in the workforce are making less. And there is this attitude, they probably voted for Trump anyway, so let them all starve. There's this element there, and it is very dangerous. But I want to bring up one final thing, because I know I'd like to hear what you say about it. If we can go back a few to the clip just before Governor Abbott, where it says Fauci tells Congress. I know we're jumping around a little bit here, but this is pretty funny. This came out from yesterday. Fauci says, we're all waiting for a vaccine. He said, you got to shut this thing. This is what he said. You got to shut down the country until we get a vaccine. And then he told Congress, there's no guaranteeing the vaccine will actually going to be effective. He said, he warned that, quote, there's a potential for a vaccine to make the course of the disease even stronger. In other words, we got to wait forever for a vaccine, and when it gets here, it might actually be a shot in the arm to corona, a shot of steroids, and make it 10 times worse.
You've just convinced me. I'm not going to listen to this guy anymore. Of course, it didn't take us long. Not many people knew about him, I have to admit. I didn't know much about him before he got the limelight. But no, it's so misleading on what he has done and inconsistent. And that's the one thing that we should be able to do. They don't like it. They don't like it. Or if you can laugh at him, say, can you look at what he's doing? He says this day, and then he does this the opposite the next day, and we're supposed to believe him? So that's where the real problem is.
Yeah, well, I'll just close by saying there's a lot more to talk about. Think about masks. It's a debate, but the debate should be a debate. There are different views. People that are experts have different views. We should be allowed to talk about it. They are a symbol of submission. They can be, whether or not they're effective. These kinds of symbols are always an element in times of great social upheaval. We want to thank all the people that are watching too, and just remind everyone, if you're not subscribed to the channel, I was looking at the analytics recently, Dr. Paul, and we have a huge proportion of subscribed people that watch the show a lot, and that's great. So subscribe to our channel here. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org and sign up for updates there. We need to keep you informed. We need to keep in touch because there's a lot of censorship out there. And this, of all times, is a time where we need to have a thorough debate.
Very good. Today our program started a little bit late, and every time that happens, we sit around and worry, what could they be doing to us? And some people write to us seriously and say, you better be careful, you better have an alternative. But right now things are working, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, and we're getting the message out even with some shortcomings in connections, but we're doing it reasonably well, and we're going to keep doing it and until they close us down or something. I still don't think that's going to happen. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but who knows? But I do think that there is reason to be more optimistic than we generally are. I think that when you see things in an idealistic sense and find out there's a lot of people in their philosophy, they think this way, and that's what I think happens. When somebody stands up against these authoritarians, all of a sudden there's a lot of people come and join in. So I think that sentiment is very, very important, and I think the surgical mask is a symbol of authoritarianism, and that to me is something that we have to be cautious about, because some people will use it to point out you're not obeying the rules and we're going to turn you in. We have to change that idea, because that's exactly the kind of thing that leads to total dictatorship. We do not have total dictatorship, but boy, we're getting awfully close to a total control of the economic system, and it's in shambles, and that's when the people are saying, give us food, we want to eat, feed us. And a lot of people right now won't take jobs back that are offered, because it might not be as much as they can get from welfare. And instead of thinking long term and having a productive job, that gentleman, I think he had a barbershop, the 77-year-old individual, all he wanted to do was be free to do what he wants and had a job. He didn't. He really resented the fact that somebody called him up, why don't you just go on food stamps? And he told him to get lost. He says, I want to work. And I think that spirit is there. I think the spirit of working and self-reliance is what really made America a great country, but it's been undermined through the welfare warfare state for the last 100 years. So we don't revise that by changing attitudes in Washington. We revise it by having more people that are standing up against the mob that we have in Washington. And believe me, there's a lot of people that way, and the more they can stand up, the better. And that's why I want to thank all our viewers so very much for spreading our message and supporting us in what we're trying to do, because I truly believe if you're interested in peace and prosperity, all we have to start doing is talking about liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.